I'm going to go ahead and call the regular city council meeting of June 22nd, 2026 to order. Roll call, please.
Zazada. Larson.
Here.
Smith. Carlson.
Here.
Powell. Verbic.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Mayor Barnes.
Here.
5 present.
So summers are always difficult. A lot of great stuff going on for people. Everyone that is not here today has let us know ahead of time that they weren't going to be able to make it. Just want to make sure everyone knows. With that, let's move on to agenda item B. If everyone wouldn't mind standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Captain Hy-Vee, can you lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Mr. Gentry. With that, we can move on to agenda item C, approval of the agenda. I would take a motion to approve the agenda as is.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Carlson, seconded by Alderman Verbic. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Larson.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Verbic.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes, the agenda has been approved. Moving on to agenda item D, presentations. Number one, we have a proclamation that I'm going to read today, and one I'm very proud that we were able to achieve here in the city of DeKalb. Many of you, if you don't know, we've been awarded the most veteran-friendly city in the nation, the most veteran-friendly city in the state. And then tonight I want to read a proclamation which is designating the city of DeKalb as a Purple Heart City officially in 2026. So whereas the Purple Heart Medal is the nation's oldest military decoration, originally established by General George Washington in 1782 as the badge of military merit, and is awarded in the name of the President of the United States to members of the armed forces who are wounded or killed while serving honorably in combat. And recipients of the Purple Heart have made significant sacrifices while defending the freedoms and security of the United States, often bearing lifelong physical and emotional wounds as a result of their service. And the city of DeKalb is home to Purple Heart recipients, veterans, active duty service members, and military families whose service and sacrifice represent the highest ideals of courage, duty, and patriotism. And the city of DeKalb seeks to proudly recognize, honor, and express its enduring gratitude to those who have received the Purple Heart Medal and to reaffirm its commitment to supporting veterans and their families. And designation as a Purple Heart City serves as a visible reminder of the cost of freedom and the city's appreciation for those who were wounded and gave their lives in service to our nation. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Cohen Barnes, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim the City of DeKalb as a Purple Heart City and encourage all residents to recognize and honor the bravery, sacrifice, and service of our Purple Heart recipients. Normally I always ask for a round of applause for something like this, but I'm not sure this is appropriate. If you all don't mind, just take some time tonight, reflect on those you have a connection with, those that you may know that were wounded or lost their life in combat, but also those that you don't even know that on a daily basis put themselves in harm's way to be able to make sure that we have the freedoms that we have here in the United States of America. So with that, I believe we have a representative, Mr. Embry, is going to come up. Council, if you don't mind, I'd like to come down. But also I want to give Michael Embry credit for being the one who drove us being able to get this designation as a Purple Heart City. So come on up, Michael. The number two is a presentation of the FY 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, AFCR. City Manager?
Just going to do some introductions.
Okay.
Tonight, the gentleman approaching the podium is Anthony Cervini. He's a principal with Sickich CPA LLC, and we're happy to have him here to present the audit.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, for allowing me to be here this evening. Pinch hitting for one of my teammates, Brian Lefevre, who you're familiar with as the audit principal on the city's engagement here. Here to present for you on the results of our audit of the city as of and for your fiscal year ended December 31st, 2025. Presenting draft information because the final information was just received from the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, or IMRF, last week. So we're working to finalize those pieces there and have those final reports for you. Anticipate those later this week. Now, your annual comprehensive financial report is a document that's broken into three sections: the introductory section, the financial section, and then your statistical section. Those three sections there, the financial section is what meets the requirements of an audit under Illinois compiled statutes and generally accepted accounting principles. Those introductory and statistical sections are what make this what we call a comprehensive report there. Within the introductory section, just call a couple items to your attention here. First of all, on page Roman numeral 3 that you'll see in the draft as the city's receipt of the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is the 31st consecutive year that the city has received this award, and from a financial reporting standpoint, really considered to be the gold standard for what is included in an annual comprehensive financial report. So I want to commend the council for supporting preparation of that document and staff for their efforts in putting that level of document together for your constituents, your residents, taxpayers, and any others that have that vested interest in the city's financial position there. Within the financial section, the first component is the independent auditor's report. Pleased to present that we'll be issuing a clean, unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements, again, as of and for that fiscal year ended December 31st, 2025. That clean, unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as auditors, and it means the financial statements of the city, in our opinion, are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Now, the city's subject to different sets of accounting standards, mostly set forth by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or the GASB. Our responsibility as us auditors involve looking at those from an audit standards standpoint. Those are set forth by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, AICPA, as well as the Comptroller General's Office, based on the federal spending that the city has there. Within the report as well, you'll see a separate opinion related to what we call the single audit, and that single audit is required anytime the city expends greater than $1 million in federal expenditures. Used to be $750,000, but a recent threshold change has elevated that to $1 million. Pleased to report that we've also issued and be issuing an unmodified opinion on that compliance there, nor did we note any instances of non-compliance or any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So again, clean reporting across the board on the required federal reporting as well. Finally, we also issue a separate examination report on the tax increment financing, or your TIF districts there. Unmodified opinion received there as well, showing that the city is compliant from our testing standpoint with the laws and regulations associated with those TIFs. Immediately following the independent auditor's report, you'll find the management's discussion and analysis in the 200-plus page document that is the ACFR. If you're looking for the executive summary piece, looking for where to point users to for that high-level summary, this is where you direct them to. Includes 2025 information as well as 2024 comparative information. I think most importantly, it includes management's explanations for why those figures have changed from one year to the next. So reading that in context and in conjunction along with the transmittal letter, as well as the detailed memo that you have in your packet this evening, is a great way to kind of get summarized information for you as it relates to the fiscal year 25 results there. From a financial results standpoint, in the report, the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for your governmental funds, focusing on the general fund here, your revenues over expenditures, then you look at your changes in fund balance, transfers included in there as well. Takeaway here is that the city is compliant with its fund balance policy, which requires an unassigned fund balance of 25% there. Yours is about 63.7% of those annual expenditures, including those transfers. So again, well positioned from a general fund standpoint as well. Later in the report, past all the notes to the financial statements, you'll find the required supplementary information, budget versus actual schedules presented here, as well as funding status on the city's pension fund, so IMRF, police and fire pension. For IMRF, as a reminder here, employees contribute 4.5% towards the IMRF. City's contribution was 8.55% in fiscal 25. Statutorily required to make those contributions really once an employee is hired by the city there, so immediately funding that versus a slightly different approach that you have that is just based on how police and fire are funded there. For police, you're funding at 9.91% for the employees, and then the employers, as the employer, the city receives an actuarial valuation each year, which recommends how much you fund there. That percentage is based on your covered payroll as part of that as well. You fund what's called the entry age normal method for both police and fire from an actuarial standpoint. Firefighters contribute 9.455% there, and again, that calculation is based on the actuarial valuation as well. Just always like to call out your funded status in those funds as well there. So for IMRF, your funded status as of December 31st, 2025 was 101% there. So from a defined benefit standpoint, IMRF, again, kind of sets the gold standard when it comes to funded status for a plan of its size there. Police, as a single employer, and fire as a single employer plan are respectively funded at 61.2 and 50.1% there, continuing to see that upward trend. If you look at that RSI tables there, you'll see 10 years of data, so kind of presents a nice picture as to where IMRF, police, and fire were 10 years ago versus the funding level that you have them each at now. Finally, the investment returns, obviously police and fire now both subject to the consolidated plan and the investments at the consolidated level there. For fiscal 25, the returns were 17.79 and 17.6% respectively there. Actuarial assumptions were a 7% return, so you did have that investment outperformance there, ultimately helping the funded ratio of those plans there. Stat section, I won't cover any specific information outside of saying that just has 10 years of various trend data there. Again, another good way to look at where the city's been, kind of where you're at now, and how some of those figures have changed over that 10-year period as part of that. I'll close my comments this evening just by again, thanking the city and the staff for their efforts throughout the audit process here. This is a long process. I was talking to the team earlier, and basically going straight from audit to budget and budget to audit is kind of the yearly cycle as part of that process there. All the information we needed as part of the process was received on a timely basis for that. Again, we'll issue the final documents here as we get the remaining pieces for IMRF squared away. At that point, happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. City Manager, do you have any comments before I open it up for questions?
I was smiling because you said what's often on our mind, and we try to do a thorough job, both of the budgeting and obviously on the audit side. And I have to thank the city's finance department in particular for their work on the audit. Not too long after the fiscal year is over, they're in gear and working hard, and we've had a good experience working with Sickage. So we're happy with the results. We work, all of us collectively, all the city departments, finance and city manager's office work very hard to help the auditor give you a clean audit, and that's on sampling and reporting. But behind all that are daily exercises in prudence and trying to make sure that we hit our goals or don't exceed the goals that are going in the other direction. So we're pleased with what we present to you, and we're pleased to dig in for another budget season.
I bet you are. Council, any comments or questions? Everyone in the audience, this is just a level of transparency that we have. Well, one, oversight, and then transparency. That Sickage has continued to come every year, make sure that all our finances are in order. But it's not just making sure the T-chart is in balance, let's say. It's also that we've got checks and balances in place on how cash is handled, how checks are cut, how we order something and receive something. All those things are part of it. And you had a new feature this year where I was interviewed one-on-one with one of your members, just to be able to give me an opportunity if I was concerned. I didn't have to put it in writing. I didn't have to go through official channels. I had an opportunity to talk directly with an auditor if there was anything that came to my attention that I wanted them to maybe steer some of their efforts towards to make sure that things were good. But I love hearing that we're gold standard again. And I know you just thanked your finance department, but I know every department's involved, but man, you all do a great job. Raise your hand back there. These are core components of our accounting team in the back, and the city manager also setting the bar for the standard to make sure that we've got this level of accountability, this level of accuracy and thoroughness, which allows those of us that are elected to this position to have a lot of trust in ultimately, we've been hearing all this for the course of the year, but now a third party came in and confirmed everything that we've been told and everything that has happened. So, nice job, City of DeKalb. Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Yeah, let's give him a round of applause for a lot of hard work. All right, then that leads us on to the third part of our presentations. There's a lot of new faces in the office, or in the audience, and you may not be aware, but this is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence with the United States of America here. And we are fortunate to have our city manager who also has his PhD in history. And so what we decided to do last year as one of the many ways that the City of DeKalb is contributing to celebrating the 250th anniversary is we call it a pause for patriotism. So we have our city manager, he's been walking us through history, blow by blow of all the major events, just as a way to, there's a lot of people that come to these meetings, there's a lot of people that watch them, but it's also part of the public record that the City of DeKalb, especially the city manager, took time to, learn a little bit more about our great country that we have here. So this is, this is the 12th one? No, 11th. 12th?
12.
This is the 12th episode here, so looking forward to it, City
12th
Manager.
and final.
Floor is yours. I don't know if it's final.
Everybody's applause now. So good evening, everybody, and all the ships at sea. There's maybe one or two people looking in. Yes, and for the better part of 6 months, the council has encouraged us to take a look at not only what our founding founding fathers, which I guess they were, but the founders of our republic and the key documents such as the Declaration has the creed that is embodied in the Declaration made it to this point in our history, 250 years on. And so we've been exploring that. There's no automatic answer to it, and all of us may have an opinion about that. But I'm going to take a few minutes tonight to try to pull all this together and take us around to some conclusion. And there really is no conclusion, as I think you've known since we've been talking about this. The work of liberty and equality and ensuring that they endure for our families and our children and their children's children never stops. So let me begin.
Please.
And I hope you'll indulge me tonight. I'm going to cover a little ground that's not in your background, but I thought it was appropriate to depart from some of what I said, which you've had a chance maybe to peruse, but in the same, I guess, spirit. So we've looked at some high points of our American progress to extend freedom to all citizens, all times, in our country, over our country's history, and it's been an up and down affair. Interestingly, and I think you would agree, at least from what we've been talking about, that the high points of this process have occurred generally in some pretty compressed periods, as revolution or major changes, social, economic, or political, often do. The American Revolution itself lasted about 15 years. There are different estimates probably of when it began and when it didn't, but the First Continental Congress, prior to the war, the outbreak of war in 1774, probably till the inauguration of the first president under the new Constitution in 1789. 15 years, kind of neat. Certainly not a neat process, but from this vantage point, it looks like it had a beginning and an end. The constitutional and the economic revolution of the mid-19th century, which was characterized in our memory from early school days by the Civil War, lasted about 10 years. And we could probably date the beginning of that process. We could go back to 1820, which we did back in February. But really the beginning of the realignment of our political parties back in the late 1850s through the Civil War and the Reconstruction in the late 1860s has often been called that second revolution in our history. It certainly meets the definition of a revolution. One whole property system was abolished. There was a nationalizing trend that went through our transportation system, our finance system, the way that we dealt with trade and other things such as that. We had higher hopes. The second Reconstruction then lasted about 5 years. Or excuse me, the first Reconstruction. The second one took 100 years to be born, and it lasted only about 5 years. And I want to focus on that tonight because it may not be well known. But I would date it from the beginning of the March on Washington in 1963 and take us about to 1968. I'm going to try to connect all these eras together in about 5 to 8 minutes and with a little epilogue. And I hope as I get near the end, I hold it together. First, we need to climb out of the Civil War. So Lincoln promised at Gettysburg in November of 1863 that the principal war aim needed to be changed. And indeed it was. The third resolution of the Republican platform leading up to the election of 1864 resolved that as slavery was the cause and now constitutes the strength of this rebellion, the party demanded its utter and complete extirpation from the soil of the Republic. We had the Emancipation Proclamation, but if the war ended before there was a constitutional amendment protecting that drift, then all would be naught. The war would have been fought, slavery would still exist in the law of the land. And so Lincoln was reelected on that platform, and in January of 1865, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was passed. It was eventually ratified by the requisite number of states in December of 1865. That energy continued in the next several years after Lincoln's death. We had the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, and some of you learn in high school, if they still teach high school history, I don't know. Junior high school? I don't know. Somewhere along the way. That the 14th Amendment, which is known today for other things, but it prohibited states from making or enforcing any law which abridged the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States or deprived any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or denied to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. The Equal Protection Clause was written into the Constitution. And the next thing that was needed was the 15th Amendment, which established for all citizens of the United States the right to vote, that it would not be denied or abridged by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. At this point, no reference to sex, national origin, and so forth. So these amendments and what happened with the result of the war probably constituted a triumph for liberty and representative democracy. Certainly, it was an extension of where we were back in the 1770s and 1780s. But amendments need federal law to enable them, to enable the fruits of them to be enjoyed. And that pulse toward liberty and representative democracy didn't last more than a few years and soon eroded after the 1860s. There was a bit of a reprieve in the late 1860s before he became President Grant as Lieutenant General and leader of all the military in the United States. Grant did send troops into the South to ensure that citizenship and equal rights would be pressed, and particularly in the more settled areas of the South. But that pretty much eroded by 1873. And a couple things happened then. My parents lived through the Great Depression. There was a worse depression in the late 19th century. Get this, from 1873 to 1893, a 20-year long-range depression that flattened both North and South. There were several panics in that. But that wasn't sufficient. Basically, the amendments were ahead of where the thinking was, mostly in the North and in the South. And particularly with respect to persons of color who might be looking for elective office, government positions, or even just to own their own homes or businesses. And not helping matters were that the Supreme Court, which had been totally reworked in the 1860s, in the later 1870s, had a whole different outlook. It had become conservative again, and they started ruling in ways which will last until the end of the 19th century. One of the first and probably one of the most damning rulings by the Supreme Court in the 1870s was to rule that the 14th Amendment did not apply to people. It applied to state governments. And the case that was brought before them that led to that ruling had to do with the murder of about 100 black persons in Louisiana. The court ruled that they could not be prosecuted. Only the state could have violated the 14th Amendment, and the state was not indictable. So the next time there was, I would say, an extension of freedom as we appreciate it today was when the 19th Amendment was approved and ratified in 1920. The 19th Amendment expanding nationwide suffrage to women, but otherwise civil rights enforcement was basically handed over to the states, and with very rare exceptions from the 1870s until the mid-20th century, the idea of independence that was expressed so memorably in the Declaration had yielded to fear and hate. Now, let's take a giant leap to another era closer to our own. What some historians have called the Second Reconstruction of the 1960s had its roots in a generation who survived the Great Depression, went on to fight for liberty in the most cataclysmic world war of all time. But in that period, in the 1940s and 1950s, only a handful of presidential orders and a few Supreme Court rulings were able to weaken resistance, but not to undermine it in the Congress, particularly in the committees in the Congress that were controlled by people who were still clinging to segregation and other measures such as that. I won't go through all of them. There really aren't many of them. Harry Truman in 1948, exasperated because the Congress would not pass the Civil Rights Bill, using his presidential powers, desegregated the armed forces and appointed the first black federal judge in history in our country. That was in October of '49. Not much to show for almost 100 years. The appointment of Earl Warren as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by a Republican president, Mr. Eisenhower, led ultimately to a very important court ruling when Earl Warren wrote for the majority in the Brown v. Board of Education case. The ruling affirmed the argument that the defendant and all persons had to, going forward, not tolerate the separation of any race as inferior, and if they had, they would be acting unconstitutionally. And that overturned Jim Crow as we came to know it in the late 19th and for much of the 20th century. And it actually overturned the Dred Scott decision finally, which had led to the Civil War. But that was not enough. In 1957, 9 black children attempted to attend Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they were turned away by Governor Orville Faubus, who said integration will not occur in the state of Arkansas. And to his credit, and he had no election to run for at that point, President Eisenhower sent 1,000 paratroopers of the 101st Airborne into Little Rock, Arkansas, federalized the Arkansas National Guard to protect those 9 black students and any others who wanted to attend an all-white high school, thus integrating that high school over the resistance of the governor. It was the first time federal troops were deployed in the South to enforce civil rights since 1873. Eisenhower had a special bond with the 101st. It was just 13 years before that on the eve of D-Day, he showed up at the airfields where the 101st were boarding planes to parachute into occupied France to begin the land campaign to liberate Europe and to bring human rights back to those countries that were then ruled by Germany. Several of those survivors in 1957 were captains and majors and a few colonels in the 101st. Eisenhower wanted to be sure that those 9 students would be protected. He knew. Okay, the second Reconstruction. This is easier. It's only 5 years. I would say that in August 28th to be exact, 1963, our better angels emerged again, and the second Reconstruction began in full. On that day, Martin Luther King, despite a lot of concerns about violence and so forth, led a very peaceful march and found a very peaceful surroundings at the Lincoln Memorial in front of the reflecting pool. And he tapped the American conscience before a very immense crowd at the Lincoln Memorial. He famously stated, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." He clearly knew, because he was a very practical idealist, that this was not an end but a beginning. He also knew at the beginning of our republic, men dreamed big but failed to include everyone in that dream, limiting liberty largely to white men. He asked in a very inspiring fashion for the expansion of the founder's vision. Nothing more, but surely nothing less. But he also knew he needed help. And now we learn a little bit about what I think is maybe the most remarkable chapters of personal and political courage in our presidential history. On the eve of President Kennedy's funeral, which was just a few months later, Dr. King got a call from President Lyndon Johnson, where he was staying in New York. Now, if you know something about our more recent history, Johnson will forever be remembered for the war in Vietnam. But before that heated up and before it occupied the focus of his presidency, he was all about what he called the Great Society. He was born dirt poor. He had, unlike most presidents, a recognition, despite all the things that he had to go through and the compromises he made, that there was another America, and it was not well served by the law, by the economy, and otherwise. So, partly because of the suddenness of his accession to the presidency and the overwhelming revulsion of most Americans to the violence that happened on November 22nd, 1963, he had an amazing period of time to make some hay, to gain some ground in terms of what that creed of ours promised. And for a few short years, he and Mr. King were a partnership that was unrivaled. On that November evening, it was just, by the way, 100 years after Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Johnson told King that a draft bill that had been submitted by the Kennedy administration in the fall of '63 in behalf of civil rights would be his top priority. And in collaboration with Dr. King, and I won't go through all the details of it. Johnson was able to sign a landmark Civil Rights Act on July 2nd of 1964, exactly 188 years after the founders' vote for independence on July 2nd, 1776. This comprehensive law finally made it a federal crime to discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. It also prohibited unequal application of voting registration requirements. It prohibited racial segregation in the schools and public accommodations and employment discrimination. But Johnson and King both, certainly those two, had their sights on something else that Johnson, in his familial way, called the core of the onion, and that was voting rights. Johnson, at that point, knew his advocacy might cost him the '64 election and cost the Democratic Party its dominance in the South. To unconvinced and sometimes hostile crowds on that campaign year, he stated, and this is Johnson in his words, "Should we defeat every enemy, should we double our wealth and conquer the stars, and still be unequal to this issue, then we will have failed as a people and as a nation." So the path was not easy. The Voting Rights Act that he and King were behind didn't get passed until August of '65. And before it did, a peak of violence occurred in the South, and those who understand or know something about the civil rights movement in the '60s are well aware of what happened on Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama, when peaceful marchers were moving across the Pettus Bridge, and they were attacked and beaten by the law enforcement that was waiting for them. The images that night on the nightly news enraged Johnson. He called Alabama Governor George Wallace, who was then the staunchest elected advocate for forced segregation. They met in Washington a few days later, and it was a classic Johnson mauling. He put Wallace on one of those soft couches in the Oval Office, and you see them still, and he sat on the high Kennedy rocker, and he leaned in too close for comfort. And he said, "Why don't we go out there in front of those television cameras?" By the way, we know this because Johnson still had the recording devices in the Oval Office, which were removed after his presidency. "Why don't we go out there in front of those cameras right now? Let's announce you've decided to desegregate every school in Alabama." And Wallace kind of meekly responded, "Well, I can't do that. You know, the school's got school boards. They're basically locally run, and I haven't got any power to do that." "Don't bullshit me, George Wallace," he said. And then he went on to describe the Great Society program he had in mind, how it might help him in the South. And he closed by telling Wallace not to think about future elections. He knew that Wallace was interested maybe in running on a Democratic ticket in 1968. He said, "George, don't think about 1968. Think about 1988. You and me will be dead and gone. What do you want left when you die? A great big marble monument that reads George Wallace, he built. Or a little piece of scrawny pine that reads George Wallace, he hated." Two days later, on March 15th, Johnson called a joint session of Congress in prime time, and he began, "I speak tonight for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy. I urge every member of both parties, Americans of all religions and of all colors, from every section of this country to join me in that cause. At times, history and fate meet at a single time and a single place to shape a turning point in our unending search for freedom. So it was at Lexington and Concord, so it was last week in Selma. Rarely are we met with a challenge not to our growth or welfare or security, but rather to the values and the purposes and the meaning of our nation. The issue of equal rights is such an issue. With a country as with a person, what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? Many of the issues of civil rights are very complex, but about this there can and should be no argument. Every American citizen must have an equal right to vote. On the night of that speech, after Johnson had returned to the White House, he gets a call from Martin Luther King, who said, "It is ironic, Mr. President, that after a century, a Southern white president would help lead the way toward justice for Black Americans." I'm going to close. So if our brief exploration these last 6 months of our panorama of history have taught us anything, it's that our history is human. It's about imperfect people. We have no lock on what will happen tomorrow any more than those people who voted for American independence back in 1776. But we are the heirs of the first revolution and those who signed their names to the Declaration of Independence in order to explain to the world and for all time what they were doing and why. We are also heirs of what was arguably our second revolution, born of a commitment to contain and then ultimately expunge slavery from the Republic. And we're the heirs of that second Reconstruction I told you about tonight, and the political realignment of the tumultuous 60s that dealt with the heavy residual effects of fear and hate, which had confounded generations of Americans. So what do we do now? While it's true that the rule of law is fundamental to a democracy, the spirit of liberty and equality is still caught in that sense, which begins, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We is the first word, as it is in our Constitution. That notion binds us, the people, together, for the hope of liberty and equality in this country is more human than we may know. The philosophers of the 18th century, who were the intellectual forebears of the authors of the Declaration, had a phrase for it, a social contract. Since no person has divine authority over any other, and since force creates no right, we are left with arguments, but also agreements, as a basis for all legitimate authority among citizens. So on the eve of the 250th anniversary, what is the social contract between us? What connects us to our creed and our common humanity? The simple truth is that the legacy of freedom is for all of us to live up to. It's an effort that anyone can make. It requires no money, no training. Rising to equality is what Lincoln called it. In the end, John Adams had it right. The real revolution took place in the minds and hearts of the people. Once there, the principles could not be easily dislodged. 200 years ago, as the 50th anniversary of the Declaration approached, there were two surviving authors, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. They exchanged notes and worried that no one who had been present in those tumultuous days of the 1770s could appreciate what had been at stake and the momentous meaning behind their words. Jefferson thought nobody would be able to adequately capture the times except maybe external facts. But John Adams had a fonder expectation, and he more fully expressed his sentiments in a remarkable letter that he wrote to his wife Abigail on the day that passed between the vote for independence on July 2nd and the adoption of the Declaration on July 4th. On Wednesday, July 3rd, 1776, Adams wrote, "The second day of July," go figure, 1776, "will be the most memorable day in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as a great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as a day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. You will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toll and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom, I see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is more than worth all the means, and that posterity will triumph in that day's transaction." Happy 4th.
That was fantastic, City Manager. I almost wish we could just adjourn and end on a high note. All right, moving on to agenda item E, we have public participation, and I have MA as my first. As a reminder, ma'am, you have 3 minutes.
This is a betrayal of the public trust. There has been enough red flags. Continuing to ignore them is complicity. In order to silence me and intimidate me at the February 26, 2024 DeKalb City Council meeting, City of DeKalb Mayor Cohen Barnes and the DeKalb City Council shut down my microphone. To date, none of the reported issues involving unlawful actions, discrimination, retaliation, intimidation, and ongoing civil rights violations towards Hispanics by the City of DeKalb have never been officially addressed. All City of DeKalb business must pause until these issues involving unlawful actions and racism by the City of DeKalb towards Hispanics are finally addressed in a transparent manner for accountability. These serious issues do not get resolved by threats, retaliation, and intimidation. They get resolved with transparency and accountability. There has to be accountability for corruption and discrimination. Companies doing business in the City of DeKalb have a responsibility to all members of the community, including Hispanics. All companies doing business with the City of DeKalb, like Metro, Farah, John Pappas, Facebook, NIU President Lisa Freeman, Kraft Heinz, and this energy systems manufacturer, Project Big Lakes Development, must denounce, not ignore, the unlawful actions of racism by the City of DeKalb towards Hispanics. Companies can't take advantage and can't remain silent. This energy systems manufacturer must say something today and every day and expect investigations. If this is the first time hearing about this, it is because the City of DeKalb covered these issues up. Presently, City of DeKalb has paid with DeKalb taxpayer money over $38,000 to an artist for a mural that includes a text promoting unity and equality, when promoting unity and equality is clearly not happening in the City of DeKalb. This mural should instead forever be associated with the City of DeKalb racism and corruption. People should expect artist Kirsten Sandlin to publicly denounce her being used to betray the public trust and to help cover up the unlawful actions and racism by the City of DeKalb towards Hispanics. The retaliation that resulted in the wrongful death, murder of a female Hispanic senior citizen is not a trivial matter. The City of DeKalb has not acted and will not act to address these issues. All businesses must call this out and demand investigations. In addition, presently, City of DeKalb also wants flock cameras that have been abused. When City of DeKalb's own abuse of license plate readers led to the City of DeKalb repeatedly, unlawfully placing license plate readers at the homes of Hispanic complainants and Hispanic witnesses. These unlawful actions by the City of DeKalb towards Hispanics must be denounced, otherwise it is complicity and condoning racism. I fear for the safety of me and my family, and the fear only increases every day these reports are not taken seriously and do not get officially and criminally investigated. Thank you.
All right, next I have Frankie DiTaccio. Good to see you, Frankie.
Hi, good evening. My name is Frankie DiCiaccio. I'm a resident of DeKalb. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to contracting with Flock Safety. I'm opposed for three main reasons. First, I think that surveillance cameras are a threat to civil liberty. We're living in an era of rapid technological advancement, particularly in the area of artificial intelligence, and you really don't need to be a scholar of dystopian literature to understand that creating networks and databases that track community members is dangerous. It can be utilized to supersede judicial warrants, infringing upon our First Amendment freedom of association, Fourth Amendment penumbral freedom of the right to expect privacy, and our Fifth and 14th Amendment guarantees of due process. These concerns are heightened considering Flock's national database and recent collaboration with the federal government. It's my understanding that Genetec, currently contracted by DeKalb, does not keep a national database. Second, surveillance doesn't affect us all equally. Technologies reflect the people who create them, including their prejudices. We've seen time and again how community surveillance is wielded to further disenfranchise minority communities. So in addition to the well-being, the material well-being of marginalized neighbors, associating DeKalb with Flock security jeopardizes whatever goodwill this body has and continues to try to establish with Black, brown, and immigrant neighbors. Third, Flock Safety is a threat specifically to immigrants, migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, and to those of us who have taken on the task of trying to serve these communities. In a now defunct pilot program, Flock Safety previously violated Illinois law by sharing data with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. To take them at their word now, I think, is a grave error. At the beginning of this current presidential administration, I spoke alongside nearly a dozen other speakers here at City Council to try to impress upon those people sitting on the dais that we were about to enter a world changed. It has changed. Our federal government has proven hostile to constitutional rights, and our institutions are largely failing to meet the moment. Now, you may not have the power to prevent the worst impulses of your federal counterparts, but surely you have the power to pay attention, to learn from trends, to recognize when you can and can't offer a presumption of good faith, and to do your part to keep DeKalb citizens safe. I thank City Manager Nicholas for his history lesson tonight. However, I think we might be better served if we were given a current events lesson. You told the beautiful story of tiptoeing up and the arduous journey of getting to the Voting Rights Act, but you said nothing of Calais, which our Supreme Court just weeks ago gutted. And we've seen in Alabama and Louisiana a flash of actions to disenfranchise black voters. So trusting in national databases, in companies that have worked alongside this regime is absurd. And frankly, it's exhausting to those of us who are really trying to support our neighbors at a time when it's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. Amy Dowell.
Good evening. I'm also a resident of DeKalb, and there are just a few items on the agenda tonight that prompted me to speak, ask a few questions, and raise a few issues. I hope they might be addressed either at this meeting during the discussion or in future meetings and conversations. So there's two items on the agenda that prompted me to want to speak to you about water. In the audit report, there's a note about the report that was prepared by Baxter and Woodman on the water system master plan that was developed last year. There's also an ordinance to approve a development plan for a manufacturing facility. From the Baxter and Woodman report, we learn that the total developed area within the city is expected to increase 14% between 2025 and 2035. The largest area of growth for the city consists of industrial usage, which is anticipated to affect the water demand. My questions around this are, did these projections include the recently approved data center, the additional expansions to Meta, and future considerations? But also, how often will we update this report and our projections, and the available supply? It also outlines improvement costs from 2025 to 2030 are over $22 million, and from 2030 to 2035 are over $13 million. My questions around this are, how will these improvement costs be paid for? Does the additional revenue from these industrial developments cover the cost of necessary water infrastructure improvements? I understand that some of these improvements are necessary for current industry and current development, but I also wonder how much of that is from future development, and will they bear the cost, or will we as current residents bear the cost? And while we're thinking about water, and especially water supply, I would like to ask if the City of DeKalb is encouraging and supporting county efforts to better understand the groundwater supply in our county. There's work of three-dimensional geologic mapping that has happened in Boone counties and McHenry counties in order to better protect water quality and hydrologic integrity. And I hope that we will be encouraging that in DeKalb County so that we can have a regional look at our water supply. Finally, I do also want to address the contract with Flock Safety. I've talked with some of you here. I know that many of you have had conversations, and I know that there are a lot of people in this audience tonight that will speak more on this specific item, because I only have 40 seconds left. But there are significant concerns with this company's aggressive expansions that go far beyond simple driver surveillance, and I hope that the council will consider these concerns before spending our tax dollars with this company. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item F, appointments. We have none. Then moving on to agenda item G, consent agenda. Number 1, minutes of the regular city council meeting of June 8, 2026. Number 2, accounts payable and payroll through June 22nd, 2026 in the amount of $3,246,524.15. And 3, Freedom of Information Act FOIA report, May 2026. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Carlson, seconded by Alderman Verbeek. Any comments or questions, council? All right, roll call, please.
Carlson,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes. The consent agenda has been approved. Moving on to agenda item H, public hearings. We do have a public hearing. I'm going to go ahead and call the public hearing of Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, CAPER, for program year 2025, April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. I'm going to have that opened at, it is exactly 6:55. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:55. All right. Moving on to agenda item I, considerations, we have none. Agenda item J, resolution 2026-058, or I would take a motion to bring resolution 2026-058, receiving and filing the FY 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, ACFR, Single Audit Report, Report on Compliance with Public Act 85-1142, TIF Report, Downstreet Operating Assistant Certification and Independent Auditors Report, and Management Letter.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Larson, seconded by Alderman Carlson. City Manager?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments, if I may. I detailed some of the things that the Sikich representative passed along, and they're in your background and the public's background for reading and review. We highlight every year at this time after the audit not only some of the high points that are mentioned with respect to the numbers, but also what we've done in terms of some major initiatives. Sometimes it's development, sometimes it's infrastructure planning and the like. And as you look on your pages 11 through 13 or so, there are a number of initiatives there. Fire Station 4 was completed in 2025. The 10-year water system study that was referenced just earlier was completed. That was about a year and a half. And of course, that is something that we look at very carefully, and we work obviously with Baxter and Woodman on this, but we also work with state agencies and others more local or regional to talk about common concerns about protecting our water supply and so forth. And the 10-year system study that we did, we could have done a 20-year, but we would be really guessing the last 10 years about what might be going on. We tried to put a rope around it that was more realistic and something we can get our hands on. I think the study so far is holding up pretty well. We projected a variety of development across the city and also in the city's south industrial parks. And we're very careful to point out impacts that we could afford in terms of volume and also cost to the city, and what we could not. We have a TIF program, which is also highlighted. It refers to both TIF 3 and TIF 4, and of course there's a special part of the audit that is reserved for demonstrating those numbers. We have a joint group that represents all the local taxing bodies that sits on our joint review board and helps us in planning for TIF expenses going forward. A number of capital projects, including in 2025, $4.5 million toward road maintenance, also a variety of capital projects having to do with the replacement of certain types of vehicles and equipment that the city needs year in and year out. And we had some old equipment that needed to be replaced, and we did that in 2025. So all in all, we hope you've had a chance to browse through the audit. And as I've summarized it, as it's summarized in the background, we feel it's suitable to accept this draft and to approve the resolution.
Council, any comments or questions on this? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Verbic,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes. Resolution 2026-058 is approved. All right, we've got some public participation for Resolution 2026-059. I always announce just if someone has already said what your points are, please, you're more than welcome to just refrain. We've got some more things that we want to get through on this committee meeting, but by all means, everyone here, I'll read your name and just come on up to the podium if you still want to speak. So the first one we have is Elizabeth Johnson Cooney? CUNY. Thank you, ma'am. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Johnson CUNY. I'm a resident of DeKalb. Inspired by Bill Nichols' history lesson today, I want to ask us how liberty is served by the consolidation of surveillance by flock safety. Current Illinois court rulings say that automatic license plate readers do not violate the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search. However, the data collected can easily be used and abused. I would reference the former police chief in Kansas, Lee Nygaard, who resigned after flock data was used by him 228 times in 4 months to track his ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend. He was forced to resign. However, the use of flock data in that instance is disturbing as a woman. Flock says that they follow all federal and state laws, but this is usually after allegations such as those against former Chief Nygaard come out. Illinois has a law protecting automatic plate reader data from moving out of the state, and I appreciate that that law exists. However, I do not see a reason for this council to switch to the company that inspired such that law to exist. Flock's CEO has said that he wants to use cameras and AI to stop all crime. A generous interpretation would be that he does not understand the majority of crime, how it happens, where it happens, and why it happens. I do not trust Flock, and neither should you. I understand that media literacy in this country is at an all-time low, but when I first heard about Flock, I was reminded of the sonar tech in the 2008 movie, The Dark Knight. It's amazing technology, but Morgan Freeman's character called it beautiful, unethical, and dangerous. It seems that Flock Safety has seen that in technology and said, yeah, let's do that in real life and make money off of it. I also wonder why Flock is cheaper. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And if this data is misused or abused, I wonder who will ultimately pay the civil damages. I doubt it will be Flock, and I doubt Lee Nygaard paid any money either. Thank you.
Samantha McDavid.
Good evening. I am also speaking in opposition to authorizing a contract with Flock Safety. While I acknowledge that the City of DeKalb and the State of Illinois both have privacy policies regarding automatic license plate readers, the specific company being considered tonight, Flock Safety, has proven to disregard these policies and has shared data with other unauthorized entities as recently as 2025. Additionally, my rudimentary understanding is that there are some key differences between Genetec, the current provider, and Flock Safety. Flock Safety is cloud-based linking systems nationwide, causing greater concern for individual privacy and unauthorized sharing of data, specifically of vulnerable community members. The data collected by Genetec is solely owned by the city, while Flock Safety maintains rights to data to improve its systems, whatever that means. Lastly, while Genetec is a privately owned company that relies primarily on revenue of sales and subscriptions, Flock Safety is beholden to venture capitalists with a significant interest in surveilling community members for their own profit and not for the general safety of our communities. Before approving, please answer the following questions for yourselves and the community. 1, who owns the data collected by automatic license plate readers? 2, how will DeKalb guarantee that our local data is not sold to or otherwise misused by either government or private entities? 3, is the risk of our individual privacy and the safety of our neighbors worth a minimal cost savings? And 4, will the City of DeKalb commit to an annual independent public audit that reports any privacy violations, any appropriate discipline measures, and that evaluates the efficacy of the system, regardless of which service provider is approved? Thank you.
Billy Giese? I know I got that wrong.
Good evening. I'm going to be a little southern here and tell you a story and come about community. My name is Billy Giese, and I've been a resident voter in DeKalb for almost 27 years. Growing up with a career military family, father, I was uprooted every few years growing up. Throughout my early adult life, I continued this living pattern of mobility. After turning 40-something and moving to DeKalb to teach at NIU, I learned something essential which had been missing in my life. Living in one place for a time gives you a sense of belonging, a common purpose, and connection to others. Community is important to the quality of our lives here in DeKalb. So with this ideal in mind, I want to commend our police chief, Byrd, for his presence at many of our city events. I've seen the chief visiting the public or leading his officers and providing safety measures for large crowds at celebrations and gatherings. This, for me, signals that the chief is someone who walks the walk and is trusted in protecting and serving citizens of DeKalb because of his dedication to being in community with us, face to face. I don't agree with switching from the current service provider to Flock. Flock is being documented by watchdog groups, journalists, and civil rights advocates because it is creating an ever-expanding database for national mass surveillance systems and partners with commercial data brokers. In other words, it's selling and sharing collected information on all of us. With this system, it can track drivers' real-time and historical location information to see exactly where you have been and where you're going. And they can do this without a warrant. This is an invasion of privacy that puts all of us in our community at risk. I think we need to step back from messaging that Flock's methods and practices are necessary for public safety. Without regulations and safeguards, Flock's tracking of everyone, monitoring our public movements, both in real time and retroactively, poses a significant threat to our Fourth Amendment rights. I am urging that our city council does not partner with a company that puts their own corporate profits over the safety and privacy of our community and our commitment to each other's well-being.
Jonathan Durbin?
Hello, I'm Jonathan Durbin. This is the first time I'm speaking on this side of the microphone at one of these meetings. But yeah, I'm here to speak in opposition to the approval of this Flock contract. And, you know, as a staff member at another municipality, when I read the two memos included in this transmittal, you know, one of the basic assumptions that Chief Byrd made in his memo is that the public simply wouldn't care what particular vendor is being used. That was used rhetorically as a way to, you know, explain away a lack of public engagement and education on this issue, and that assumption clearly isn't well-founded. And in short, and this will be a short statement, you know, as a staff member, if I went to a committee of the whole meeting or a discussion item and had a memo like that, that has these, you know, fundamental issues, really, with the assumptions that it's making, I would hope that the Board of Trustees would, well, City Council in this case, would identify that and ask that go back to the drafting table, you know, take another look at this, look at the actual policies, you know. I saw that it looks like in March, the, you know, DeKalb Police Department ALPR procedures were updated. but, it seems largely inconsequential in that, like, those are specifically just keeping in line with what the state requires. There's nothing, in particular that the city of DeKalb is doing to make sure that this data is protected. And, again, it's just what we have isn't working for these systems, pretty simply. And the assumptions that this memo is written on aren't well-founded and, just need another stab at it if we're going to have it at all. So thank you very much.
Robert Durbin.
I'm Robert Durbin. Democracy is non-functional without the robust trust of the public. Thus, it is deeply distressing that the City of DeKalb Police Department is seeking to do anything with its automated cameras besides arrange for their removal. The DeKalb Police Department has failed to cultivate public trust, as has been demonstrated tonight, and provides inadequate transparency, especially when it comes to automated cameras. I will provide an abbreviated list of examples. First, failure to accurately and timely respond to FOIA requests regarding their automated cameras in both 2022 and 2023 resulted in the intervention of the state of Illinois because the police department was not doing the bare minimum. The language further used by the City of DeKalb Police Department to describe their policy on automated cameras on their website is inconsistent, often inaccurate, and broadly misleading. 3, they fail to provide basic transparency regarding their existing cameras. At a minimum, moving forward, the DeKalb Police Department needs to make sure that they provide, at bare minimum, the locations of all cameras, which they've been reticent to do in the past. And they should also, at a minimum, provide transparency regarding all data sharing with other governments. Once again, the City of DeKalb cannot be passive in its cultivation of public trust. Rather, it must go forth and find every opportunity to build on the foundation laid by its public servants these last 170 years. This is true of every issue area, but is especially pertinent to any request regarding extraordinary surveillance powers. Thank you.
Julia Thompson.
Hi there, my name is Julia Thompson, and I'm not technically a resident of DeKalb, but I spend over 50% of my week here with a loved one, and I hope that you understand that this policy that you are trying to enact today would not only affect residents, but anybody who comes to visit DeKalb. You would be potentially exposing their privacy and personal data. To the best of my knowledge, while Genetec sells the software platform that we currently use here, to the best of my understanding, DeKalb will be retaining ownership of the images and data that are collected through the use of the Genetec current system. Even though it's not ideal to have a database at all, this one sounds better than what you're currently proposing. If we switch to Flock, we would be feeding local information into a cloud that can be used as a database nationally, which has terrifying Big Brother implications. And while I understand that the city and police department are likely hoping to expand their ability to protect and serve us, I urge you to consider that this misguided resolution will in fact do the opposite by detracting from the blessings of liberty that our Constitution strives to protect for us. DeKalb should not be working as a community to do this and put the average citizens at the risk of the abuse of governmental power. As we discussed at the beginning of this meeting, the history of America, while optimistic and hopeful, is also one of imperfect people. We have no lock on what will happen tomorrow, as was spoken by Dr. Nicholas in the written portion of his speech from earlier. And to quote Jay Stanley, who is a senior policy analyst at the American Civil Liberties Union, unfortunately, this country has a long tradition extending up to the present of law enforcement targeting people not because they're suspected of criminal activity, but because of their political or religious beliefs or race. That includes quasi-private surveillance. There are also many documented instances of individual officers abusing police databases, including ALPR databases. So there have already been issues with the abuse of these kinds of databases, like somebody else mentioned earlier with Officer Nygaard. And there are other cases, such as somebody from Denver who used ALPR info to find the phone number of a hospital worker that he met through a sex crime investigation, and later used that phone number to call her at her personal residence, which is just a disturbing abuse of that information that he has access to. it's already possible for the existing system to be abused, so why on earth would DeKalb want to contribute to the growth of a national surveillance network that could inflict further harm on innocent bystanders and disturbing violations of our right to privacy? So please reconsider subjecting us to this. Thank you.
All right, so I take a motion to bring Resolution 2026-059, authorizing a contract with Flock Safety for the provision of Police Department automatic license plate reader service for a 2-year term, 2026 through 2027, in an amount not to exceed $27,500. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Carlson, seconded by Alderwoman Larson. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start off. I'm sure that Chief Byrd will have a few things to add. And
For sure.
From the outset, I'm going to say I'm not an IT professional. I'm aware of how important that can be, not just in law enforcement, but in all the work we do. I've got 2 phones on me right now, which make my work easier, also keep me in touch with loved ones, but also professionals that I work with every day. And all day long, they're feeding themselves on algorithms of my own making. And what happens with them, I don't know. What I want to speak to, and I can speak to with some confidence tonight, is that whatever the technology is, and I'll say just a little bit about the technology proposal before you, whatever it is, ultimately it gets down to the operators, the people who are responsible for operating and for administering, and also for the oversight of the use of whatever the mechanical or digital tool is. And I can say, and I'll just go back to the summer of George Floyd in 2020, also a momentous year with COVID and so forth. I was intimately involved with some other people in the room in gutting and rewriting the rules and regulations of the DeKalb Police Department to make it very responsive to the kinds of concerns that people have voiced here tonight, and in particular, our accountability and responsibility for violating any of our codes and ordinances, but also the rules and regulations of the department. So when I saw this come forward, and I was aware just by accident, because I watched the news a lot, that Flock was a name that's familiar, and I couldn't remember why, and we talked a lot about it in-house. And there were actors in other agencies, in other communities, that were bad actors and were doing things, whether they were able to do them because of the technology or not, they were violating local codes and ordinances, and some of them have been indicted for that. There is no incident or instance that I'm aware of since 2020, and even before then, of anyone in the DeKalb Police Department being held, having to be held responsible for such malfeasance or unprofessional activity. So I understand in our day and age, throwing stones is the medium, but I will defend where I can, where merited, the activity and the actions of our members if they are true to our code and our expectations, and in this case, that's what I'm doing tonight. We have LPR cameras, we have information which is available to the public, which shows that they have been helpful in us preserving the peace and in making arrests that are significant in terms of taking bad actors off our streets. We try to be a welcoming community, but we don't welcome certain types of behavior, and violent behavior is not welcome in DeKalb. So the LPRs have been important, particularly in gaining information about people who are fleeing a crime or who are coming here from some other place bent on mischief. So we're at a moment where the department is looking for some a new contract to deal with the cameras that we have. And the department has investigated very carefully what the impacts can be. But I can tell you, and it's in the background, but I don't know if people have read the background. But here's some things for you to keep in mind. So whatever settings Flock or whoever may want to impose as part of a contract, every one of our officers and the agency and the city of DeKalb have to confirm under state law and federal law that we have read, understood, and affirm under penalty of perjury that our agency agrees to comply with Illinois law, which mandates blah, 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 blah. Nothing proposed before you tonight will allow us to escape the fact that our ability to share with federal agencies is disabled. The ability to search for any immigration purpose, disabled. Our policy restricts LPR queries for only legitimate police investigations. There is no facial recognition. The cameras do not detect people, race, or gender. They only read license plates and cars. We own all the data, and Flock cannot sell it to any third party. Administrative users can see the searches, who conducted and why, as a matter of control, to make sure some of this chicanery and nonsense that went on in other places cannot be done. Which, by the way, we've had to do always when we've had lesser technology, where people are going to look for things that they shouldn't know and have no right to know whether they carry a badge or not. And our settings require both a case number and a reason for every search, which can then be documented and reviewed on a regular basis. And there are internal reporting and supervisory responsibilities that are spread throughout the department, sergeants and on up to the command staff and the chief himself. So with this in place, I have confidence in our police department and its ability to carry out all of these requirements. I think that this is an acceptable technology for us to consider. I would not have put it on the agenda if I did not. Chief, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, sir. And I want to start out by saying, first of all, to our residents, thank you for your concerns. I will start out by telling you that I've been a police officer for over 3 decades. I'll start my 37th year in law enforcement in August. So I've been through policing from what some people might consider depends on how you look at it, the good times and the bad times, or vice versa, depending on where you were at that time. And the one thing I would like to talk about as some history is that we, when I say we, the law enforcement profession, and in the early, late 80s, early 90s, when I started as a police officer, a law enforcement officer, if he was looking for a felonious vehicle or for someone for a stolen vehicle or a predator that was in the area, officers, the only resources they had was a mobile data computer, and you would go to the nearest PD and you would pick up a piece of paper which would be called a hot sheet, and it would have all stolen vehicles on the paper. So this is late 80s, early 90s, so you imagine you're driving around, you're looking at a piece of paper and you're looking for a stolen vehicle, driving as you go. And you're running plates over and over again through the LEAD system. And just for, if people don't know what the LEAD system is, it's the law enforcement agency data system that we use in the state of Illinois. And that's where we get all our information from regarding vehicle registration, driver's information, if they're wanted or not, if vehicles are stolen or not. So as you can imagine, you would run 100 inquiries a night as a police officer trying to locate felonious vehicles in your area, stolen vehicles, wanted subjects. So fast forward to where we are now in 2022, we now have license plate readers who serve that function for the police department. At a time in law enforcement where it's been extremely hard to maintain minimum staffing numbers, it is extremely hard to grow your department because there's a lack of candidates and qualified candidates there should be police officers. So we depend on this force multiplier, which are the LPRs. They give us eyes where we don't have eyes. If you can imagine, as a police officer, you could be driving down northbound Madison in the vehicle you're looking for that's wanted, or is for a homicide, or is a kidnapped a child is going the opposite direction on another street. Most likely you're going to miss that vehicle. With the license plate readers, the ability for them to escape those access points has been diminished. So we'll be notified immediately about felonious vehicles that come into our town. So these are predators that we do not want in the city of DeKalb. They are here only to be a menace to our society. So although the concern about the license plate readers is really, I think we're not pointing the direction to the biggest concern, which is the human component of every system that we use, not just in law enforcement, but in any type of entity that you indulge in. The LEAD system has been improperly used throughout history numerous of times. I can tell you as a member of the state police that I suspended a trooper for using the LEAD system inappropriately. So it wasn't the system, it was the person. It was the human component. We did not disregard and toss away the LEAD system because we had officers that were using the system inappropriately. What we did was we took action against that person. And in regard to some of the newest, someone brought up some most recent cases with Flock, there's an internal mechanism, there's an internal audit in Flock that actually captured the fact that someone was using it inappropriately. Those anomalies are notifications that are presented and sent to the administrators. So for the DeKalb Police Department, myself, we have Deputy Chief Erkes in the attendance as well, and all our commanders are administrators. So we all get the same notification. So if we see an anomaly or something that is inappropriate or doesn't unusual, we will make those checks and make sure that that was appropriate. You are required to have a case number. You are required to address why you are putting that vehicle in the system. And our job as administrators is to make sure that those checks are correct and according to policy and the law. Now, one thing I think needs to be also addressed is that it really comes down to trust. Do you trust your police department? At the end of the day, I constantly address my officers and speak to them about being righteous in their actions at all times. I end almost every email with that same statement: be righteous at all times. We have done everything we can as a police department. There was concerns about immigration. We have a great relationship with DART, which is an amazing group here in the city of DeKalb, who are concerned about immigration, and we changed some of our protocols specifically for that agency to make sure that they understood that we were going to be doing everything we can to make sure that we follow the rules of the state of Illinois in regard to immigration. We were giving them information about search warrants that were occurring just to make sure that it would ease their mind before we conducted our search warrants. And sometimes after those search warrants, we had conversations with them. They have my number, they have Deputy Chief's number. They can call us at any time. So we have taken steps as the DeKalb Police Department to make sure that we have built some unity towards our residents in regard to these situations that you spoke of earlier, and specifically in regard to immigration. Some of the things that that were brought up, I do want to address that the LPR data is not subject to FOIA requests. So someone mentioned that. It's not. There is no facial recognition. The cameras do not detect people, race, or gender. They only read license plates and cars. We talk about, we own the data. Flock cannot sell it to a third party. Mr. Nicholas spoke on that. At the end of the day, there are checks and balances in place. It doesn't matter what the system. We have the same checks and balance with Genetec. We would have the same checks and balance with Flock. Vigilant is another company that some departments use. When it comes to access and resources and networking with other agencies, Genetec reaches, we only have 20 to 25 agencies that right now have Genetec and that we network with. With Flock, there's over 1,300 police agencies that we can network with. In our general area, our biggest cities in our general area, including DeKalb, so you're talking about Elgin, Aurora, Rockford, they all have Flock. And our bad actors come from those surrounding areas, and they're transient in between DeKalb, Rockford, Aurora, and Elgin, and then also Chicago as well. So we want to make sure that we can provide a security net over the city of DeKalb. We have taken extensive time, and we have been meticulous building that security net for the city of DeKalb. But I really think at the end of the day, this is whether you trust, the question is whether you trust your police department. We've been doing everything the right way. I've been here since 2021. There have been no inconsistencies, no inappropriate use of the LPRs at the DeKalb Police Department since we implemented in 2022. They have not been here in DeKalb. Genetec also has no internal audit, where Flock does. I mentioned Genetec does not pick up vehicles with no plates. Genetec will not pick up a vehicle with a partial plate. Genetec will not pick up a vehicle with a temporary plate. And if, as you can imagine, if someone committed a violent crime, one of the first things they would do could possibly remove their plate, could possibly switch their plate to a temporary tag, which Genetec does not pick up. Flock picks those up. So in theory, the reason why we are moving, because we want to make sure that we are progressive in fighting crime here in the city of DeKalb. We have the best body-worn cameras. We've done our best to have the best vehicles. We have done our best to have the best mobile radios, mobile data computers, and all these resources are here for us to provide public safety to the city of DeKalb. And at the end of the day, although I do understand the concern with our residents, and believe me, as a black man, I understand being over police. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I know what it looks like. You don't have to tell me. And I've done everything I can here as the chief of police here in the city of DeKalb to make sure that that doesn't occur here. But I do want us to be real about public safety. There are predators in and out of the city of DeKalb every day. And I don't think that we should diminish our capabilities to stop them from coming into the city, causing harm to our residents who are right here sitting looking at me right now. And Flock is just a system. At the end of the day, there's a human component behind it, and I would hope that you would trust the human component in the city of DeKalb, meaning the DeKalb Police Department. Thank you.
Hey, Chief, question for you. You know, we talk a lot, rightfully so, about the people that this could be impacted by. But, do you have any examples of like how the LPR cameras
work?
Yeah, well, got a really bad guy, or maybe helped us find kids that may or may not have been abducted, things like that, just so people can understand the actual impact of LPRs in general, despite the system here in the city of DeKalb.
Yeah, so I mean, as you can imagine, just a commonplace entry would be if we had someone who committed a ag battery to a person, we would take that, if we had that information from a witness who would say, hey, the last vehicle, or the description of the vehicle was a black Chevy Malibu with a partial plate of A. Adam, B. Boy. And that's what we will put in the system. So any department that has Flock that plate would trigger a notification to their officers. If they don't have Flock, and they have, like, if they had Genetec, they wouldn't get that hit. So that notification would not have come. But if you have Flock, that hit will be notified to that officers, whether it's Aurora, Elgin, and it will tell them exactly where that vehicle crossed that LPR, what direction they were going in, and then officers could respond and expedite making contact with that vehicle. Now, we still have to do good police work then, because we still have to get them stopped and take them into custody, which is being notified is just 1/3 of it. Those other 2/3 are extremely tough and hard. But at the end of the day, we have done that here in DeKalb. We had a bank robbery that occurred a couple of years ago, and if it wasn't for our public service cameras and our license plate readers, we don't know if we would have made an arrest in that bank robbery. Or even if we would have, it could have been years from now. And that's my concern when we even talk about reducing the footprint of the license plate readers. There was a murder years ago in Tinley Park area, the Lane Bryant murders, have not been solved at this point. It's been years. There were no public safety cameras in that parking lot, and of course, there were no LPRs at that time. But imagine if that would occur today, there's no way that we would not have a strong lead that would lead to an arrest. So we have to be extremely careful about speaking about going backwards. This technology is going forward. I have a little map here, and it'll show you, if you can see it, this is the Chicago area. This is a heat map of all of Flock's system cameras. This is Chicago. Majority of the Chicago agencies in the Chicago metropolitan area have Flock. Everywhere you see, this is a heat map. This just shows you how vast they have spread it out. And I know people could say, well, why Flock? This is the same thing. If you walked into any state, any police department in any state years ago and you look in the camera, you could be guaranteed that they would have a Motorola radio. Because you know why? Because Motorola cornered the market. They had the best product. Every department had Motorola. Everyone, no doubt. We use the cameras we use are Axon. Most of the departments have Axon because it's the best product out there. This is the same reason why we want to move to Flock, because Genetec does not give us the bandwidth that we need to be effective in providing public safety to the city of DeKalb. It gives us more access to our partners in our area because they have Flock. If we're not on that program, we won't get any of their information. I just want people to understand that. We won't get that information. So if they're bad actors that are putting this system from Rockford and they show up in DeKalb, we will not know that. The only way we will know that is if a police officer makes contact and runs that plate and gets that information, which happens because we're still doing good police work. I mean, we have an amazing police department. We have amazing police officers that work extremely hard every day. But we can't be at every place at every time. We can't put an officer on every street. And I think we all understand that. It's just a force multiplier for us. But it does make us more efficient. It does. Because now we are notified when someone who is here only to be a menace to our city comes in through our threshold into a city proper, and then now we can locate that vehicle and take them into custody before they cause harm to one of our residents.
So someone in Chicago that shoots someone, there's an active investigation, they're after them.
Sure.
They get out of Chicago somehow, some way. If they came across the border of the city of DeKalb, they might know someone here, this is where they're gonna lay low, which we've got plenty of examples of just that. That would trigger the Flock system and let us know that this individual that has an active search warrant out for him, because they're trying to find this bad guy, that's going to let us know and help us be able to apprehend him.
And that's happened, so that's so you get a picture of that. You have a dispatcher in the room. She gets an LPR hit. Immediately she vets that hit, and then she runs that plate and says, yep, that car's wanted for homicide out of Chicago. She gets on the radio. She makes notification to all the officers. We have a black Chevrolet whatever Caprice that just crossed at Peace Road and whatever crossroad you want to, cross street you want to use, and he's traveling eastbound. He's wanted for homicide out of Chicago. So now all our officers scramble. They get to that location, they locate that vehicle, they try to make that traffic stop. Hopefully it goes well without a pursuit, and then they take that subject into custody. And then, of course, we call Chicago Police Department. They send out officers to come and apprehend him and take him back to Chicago.
Awesome.
That's, in a nutshell, how that process would work. At the end of the day, we would prefer to keep that predator from hurting someone in DeKalb or hiding in DeKalb until, for God knows how long. So at the end of the day, that is how we work in a nutshell, sir.
Alderwoman Larson.
Not really a question, but just to add my thoughts on this whole process and the concern of we all should have, because we're in the cusp with this whole AI and how that is really changing how all of our personal data is stored. But I'm sorry, if you have this, if you have a computer, if you use a search engine, if you have a nav in your car, a nav system, they can pull that out too. It's like there's hackers, that's what they do. They try to get everything, and if they can make money off of it, they somehow figure out a way to do it. But I do go back with what the chief and everyone has said. At the end of the day, we're all here about community, and that was very important to you. And we were just talking the other day about when the Methodist Church wanted to build a church out in Annie Glidden. Who would build a church out there? Oh my God, it's so dangerous. Who would do that? It's just horrible. All of a sudden, with the license plate readers, with new policing techniques and everything, oh, Annie Glidden's kind of a nice neighborhood. And the church is doing just fine. And so all of those tools that we've had to use to make our community safer, that people want to live in. And when you talk about transparency, they're hanging up there. You take your time, you can find every camera in the city. It's not like they're underground, hidden somewhere. So I guess I'm just, I'm realize that any system that we use, which I think we desperately need to continue using, the one soft spot in everything is human abuse. And you do have to just sometime go forward with that, so.
Alderman Carlson.
If you all indulge me, and I'm sorry it's history night, but this is something that is the majority of my career. I've worked on traffic signals and street lighting, so I called a bunch of people I've worked with over the years. And where the history lesson is, this isn't new. PTZ, and that's called pan, tilt, zoom cameras, have been around 30 years. How do I know this? I installed them. I installed one out on Route 23 and Gurler Road. It's been up for 5 years. That is a pan, a tilt, and a zoom. That same camera is what apprehended the shooter in Wilmette on the 4th of July. It was not this. This is the new technology that comes from that. But it's been around for 30 years. Now that is a surveillance. There are also cameras you'll see downtown. Those are detection cameras. They literally take a picture of the direction and you draw in so the vehicle goes over it and that detects the vehicle to change the light. It is not a database. But the database for the pan, tilt, zoom goes directly down to the state of Illinois. How are they storing it? I have no idea. I haven't known for 30 years. But I know they've caught bad guys. I know they're out on the tollway. So I've taken a look to this because many people have called me in that, and I understand your concerns. I get it. I don't like to be videotaped everywhere. However, all of my neighbors have rings. I'm surveillanced 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So aren't my neighbors because I have 2 rings. Amazon owns that. What's Amazon doing with it? Does anyone here know? I don't. It is a technology that's scary. I get it. But it's a technology that's been around for a long time. The invention of fiber optics and now Wi-Fi that can take images and transport them so quickly. That is, and also I will tell you for transparency, out at Gurler in 23, it also has AI. How do I know that? I integrated it almost 5 years ago. It's more for counting traffic, not catching bad guys. But if something happens, you can go to that PTZ, go and take that information. So it is a technology where, which way do we go with it? And I agree with you, Alderwoman Larson, that this is watching me every day. The rings are watching me every day. Everything is watching me everywhere I go. I just went to San Francisco. The world knows I went. They know when I'm in Chicago. They know when I'm everywhere. That's the world we live in. It is up to the humans. It's up to where they store the data. And that's the thing. But I trust that, man. I've said it now for a year, and I'm going to say it until the end. And so I trust you, and I am behind you for all these reasons.
Alderman Walker.
Hey, I got a quick question. How long will the data be stored?
So now you can set those, but it's a 30-day window. So the good thing about, like I said, and this is our data, the audits though are archived. So the audits last forever. The information, you get a 30-day window, and then it starts to purge. The system with the audit is the key because there's an internal audit. It works proactively. So whenever you see someone puts in multiple, this one plate multiple times, it's an anomaly. So it'll trigger a notification. So it'll say to me or Deputy Chief Erthy, hey, we got an anomaly. So then we would call that officer and say, hey, we saw you put this plate in multiple times. What was the reason for this? Now, this is where the oversight comes into play. There are times when you would put a vehicle in multiple times because he's wanted and we have not captured this person yet. So we're just trying to get driving habits. So we put it in, we're gonna put it, anybody captured? No, we're gonna put it in again Wednesday because maybe he went out of DeKalb and he hasn't returned back yet. So we don't wanna lose this. So we put it in again to make sure if he comes back that he's still hot. If you understand, I'll use that term because we use it all the time, but it means that he's still wanted and we still want him and we still want to talk to him. So we will put it in again, but the audits last for the entirety of the time you have the system. But to answer your question, Alderman Walker, it'll start to purge after 30 days.
Hey, and can federal agencies access this information without local?
They cannot, not without our permission. So when you apply for this, you have to check those boxes. We do not want federal access granted. We already follow the Trust Act when it comes to immigration, like I've said, and we've done everything we can. And I know there are members here from DART who can attest to exactly what I said for the people who actually live in the city and actually know what the DeKalb Police Department is doing firsthand. To build relationships, to make sure that we are following the rules that are required for immigration status. And I think, I can attest to this, and City Manager Nicholas knows this as well. We got letters early on in the year of threatening letters to several members of our Latino community. And I went to them personally and had conversations with them and put them at ease. And I talked about this at City Council because at the end of the day, I told you they weren't afraid. Don't get me wrong. I don't want anyone to get confused. They were not afraid. But they wanted to make sure that they had the support of the City of DeKalb and the DeKalb Police Department, and myself and Mr. Nicholas and the Mayor has spent time and made sure that that happens. So I'm only bringing that up just to address the fact that we are taking in consideration the immigration component of the LPRs because we know people misuse this system. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they do not. For their own personal gain, most of the time, just like this chief just went through this. But here's the key. The actual internal audit caught him. It did its job, and they took action. It would be the same way if we had an officer who ran his girlfriend's plate multiple times. If we would get a notification, we would bring him in, and then there would be an investigation into why he did what he did. And then we would take action against that officer. So it actually did its job internally by making the notification. Genetec doesn't have that component. So it's, and like I said, at the end of the day, 20 to 25 agencies use Genetec. So we have to consider the product. Truly, as somebody mentioned that, one of our audience members mentioned that early. You're right, they are being used by most agencies, but it's not because of the cost. It's because they're effective. And I go to Chief meetings regularly, and we have these conversations about resources and what products are being used, and we share each other's thoughts on these different resources, and that's why you see so many agencies using the same one. That's why everyone used Axon, because they talk to other agencies and say, hey, you should use this camera. It's amazing. So that chief goes and said, okay, let's look into this. And then they get on the Axon. So we only sharing each other's information based on what we know that this different technology is providing for our department.
And I know there's people in the audience who won't be able to convince you otherwise.
Yeah, I understand that.
Flock is the largest provider of this particular technology, so they're obviously going to be in the news a lot. They're going to be, issues are going to be exposed, but to what you've been pointing out, Chief, it's human error that, not human error, it's human beings that are causing these issues, not the technology itself. I can't speak on behalf of council, but I have no doubt they did doing the due diligence. I would highly recommend go to Flock's website, go to their Trust and Compliance Center, and actually look at and look at some of the demos on the configurations the chief's talking about, where these features aren't turned on automatically during implementation. You have to turn them on, which means the DeKalb Police Department would have to make a conscious choice that we want to share with federal agencies. We want to do these things, and that's just not going to happen from our standpoint. Yeah.
And if I could just say, there's a transparency page that Flock does have, and we can make sure that that transparency page is up and running. So you will be able to see the searches that are being made. You deserve to know what's going on at the DeKalb Police Department. I have been extremely transparent. I have had open door meetings constantly. I just had a chat with the chief at New Hope Church. I'm making myself accessible for anyone who wants to sit down and have a conversation with me about what we're doing to provide public safety. But I also know, and I'm not naive to think that we don't require oversight. We have a very tough job, and we have a large responsibility. And I appreciate being held accountable, because I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm only speaking from experience when I do speak. So I just hope that you just trust us to do the right thing.
Do you have another question, Alderman Walker?
Yeah,
No.
so, by all the, stats that you give us, crime has drastically went down, would you admit?
I would.
So I just don't understand what the reason is for, besides every agency has it for wanting to do this, because all I've heard and all I've seen is how, our police force has stepped up to the plate and done a hell of a job. So I guess it's just confusing to me to why we need more eyes in the sky to be able to verify what everybody's doing, no matter who you are, because at the end of the day, there is always a human element in it, no matter who it is. And all due respects, we just heard about a police chief, getting caught. So I guess who does their checks and balances on you or some of your commanders? And I'm not saying there's no integrity issue. It's just, I think the public needs to understand that and know that, because I don't. And, honestly, I feel like, the citizens about all this, because you say, hey, we're black men, we came up in that, and we don't need extras, So I guess I just don't know how it works, because it just really hasn't been self-explanatory, because all we're doing is saying, hey, it does this, it does that. You can't be scaring us, like we want to catch all the criminals. Well, let's just be honest, you guys catch all the criminals with what you're doing right now, and I talked to a few police officers, and they just believe getting out the cars and, engaging into the public for help, when you need certain things. So I guess I just don't understand.
Well, I will tell you this, Alderman Walker, that's, so we're very, very limited in that. You're talking about a shift with maybe 6 to 7 officers for the whole city of DeKalb. So we need the force multiplier, that's evident. Although crime has been reduced, it's also been reduced because of the technology that we implemented. It's not just the police officers. But all we're doing, but at the end of the day, we're expanding the net so we can be more efficient. We're not a crimeless community though. We're not. So we can have a spike at any time with crime, anytime. And we want to be prepared for that spike when it occurs. And at the end of the day, the officers can, like I explained this, I talked to the citizens about this. That's why we need them to call in and tell us when they see crimes occurring. They are a force multiplier for us as well, because they give us eyes where we don't have eyes. You're only talking 6 or 7 officers a shift. And how are they supposed to police the city of DeKalb without any technology.
They've been doing it for centuries.
And it hasn't been it's more effective now than ever though.
That's what I'm saying. So leave it alone.
Well, yeah, but we're only effective to a certain amount with Genetech. It's 20 to 25 agencies.
But you've been doing so good with it, though. I mean,
But
I hear is all the great things, and
It
I
is.
see the statistics dropping. I see them, and
Well-
I'm commending you.
Mhm.
You're doing a good job. But however, when does it stop? That's what I want.
I get that, but you don't want to rest on your laurels either, though. So we cannot get comfortable as a city. We cannot get comfortable as a police department.
Didn't we have shots fired and someone shot this weekend?
Yes, we have
Correct.
spikes all the time because but that system, it will grow. So I know you're saying, well, why don't you just stick with what you have? But there's something that's new and improved that can expand our network. Why would we not do that? It would be just the same as if you said, hey, if you gave me a radio that can expand, if I can get on this radio and talk all the way to Chicago, why wouldn't I get that radio? This radio is limited. It can only talk within the framework of the city of DeKalb in the surrounding areas. But if I got in a footprint, if my vehicle if one of my guys got into a pursuit and went on 88 and got to Naperville and I couldn't hear him anymore, I mean, if they say, hey, Chief, I can give you a radio that you can still hear your officer even when he's in Naperville, why wouldn't I do that? So I don't want to rest on my laurels here. I don't want us to get comfortable as a city. We need to always expand our resources and look for newest technology and move forward. We're the biggest city in this county. We need to be progressive in law enforcement.
Alderwoman Larson?
Okay, so this is not to make light of this.
Yes.
But how many of us have televisions that still have tubes in them? No one. And we're all flat screen. Are we like a little flat screen? No. Some of us are like 65, 85. Why? Because you want a better picture. You want a better thing. It just makes sense that you want to be the best that you can be. You want to put the best force out there. That's what you've always been there for us.
And be efficient as possible. And I understand your point, though, Alderman Walker. I get it. You're saying, well, if this working, why, just let it be.
I'm not saying just let it
well,
be.
I mean, in theory, well, you're saying why touch this, this one component, right? Am I misrepresenting that? Okay, at the end of the day, all I'm trying to explain to you that we're very limited with Genetech, okay? We will only get information from those 20 to 25 agencies. One of those agencies is all the way in South Holland. The odds of us interacting with anybody from South Holland is pretty slim. But Rockford, Elgin, and Aurora, they have flock. Those are the people that we interact with the most. People come from Rockford to DeKalb to Rockford. And the reason why I know this is because I talk to my other chiefs, and they, hey, we got one of your guys in Rockford. I'm sure you do. And then we turn around and we say, yep, we got one of your guys in DeKalb, and we go back and forth. They know our names. They know our bad actors. We know their bad actors by name. So that's why we want to be able to at least share with our surrounding area. That's the gist of it.
Okay. All right. Roll call, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all. Thank
Walker?
you, too.
No.
Larson?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Mayor Barnes?
Yes.
4-8.
All right. Resolution 2026-059 passes. Moving on to number 3, Resolution 2026-060, approving an event venue liquor license for McCabe's Events LLC located at 323 East Lincoln Highway. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Verbic, seconded by Alderman Carlson. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This will look pretty familiar to you. On May 26th, the council unanimously approved an ordinance that established a new event venue liquor license. So the people who were looking to establish an orderly way of providing alcohol or not in their entertainment center would have applied for the first of its kind event venue liquor license, and that's what's before you tonight. We obviously do background investigations, and we do other types of research, and that's portrayed here and also in your background. The liquor license is valid from January 1 through December 31. There is a renewal fee after this year, provided that they remain in good standing, and we recommend their approval.
Council, questions or comments on this liquor license? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes. Resolution 2026-060 passes. Agenda item K, ordinances, second reading, we have none. Agenda item L, ordinances, first reading. Number 1, ordinance 2026-021, approving a final plat of subdivision and preliminary and final development plan for Park 88, Unit 5, Park 88 Group LLC. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Larson, seconded by Alderman Carlson. City Manager.
Thank you. This is an exciting project. We haven't had a manufacturer interested in our community for a long time. Very pleased that Venture One has been able to attract, with the efforts also of our DeKalb County Economic Development Corporation, the City of DeKalb, and the State of Illinois. This fine company it is going currently by a pseudonym, Project Big Lakes, and we hope with your approval that they will move quickly to announcing who they are. They, as I indicate in the background, are in the business of creating, building basically climate control and energy management systems, big units that are on the top of skyscrapers and so forth. They like the idea of being in DeKalb. It's outside the urban sprawl, but close enough so that they can work with potential customers in the Chicago metropolitan area and other places around the lake. And they found a welcome reception in DeKalb. Our checklist apparently conformed with their expectations, and we're happy about that. This has been to the Planning and Zoning Commission because at this point, our wonderful Park 88, which by the way, is Steve Miller's here tonight from Venture One. I think he's still there. Steve, there he is. Thank you for your patience. Has been marketing this for a while. We're happy to see this company land, and because of the manufacturing, we think it'll be very good for our residents. It's going to pay better than some other types of industrial occupations, and what we're looking for ultimately are livings that can be supported by our local economy. The Planning and Zoning Commission agreed, and by unanimous vote recommended your approval, and we hope you will support them.
Questions or comments, Council? Hearing?
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Because I get asked this a lot by constituents, of how quickly do we find out who it is? Like, I'm assuming within, if approval of who the company is.
It varies, and even though they're not situated currently in our area, our region,
Gotcha.
they have employees they're very concerned about, and if there's just news, somebody reads about their company and nobody's talked to them from their company, so a lot is riding on your decision tonight, and if with your support, then they can address that kind of question and other questions you're going to have if you're thinking about locating in a new town and what that might mean. So it will vary on the size of the company, the location of the company vis-a-vis DeKalb and the like. So
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Carlson,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes. Ordinance 2026-021 passes on first reading. I would take a motion to waive second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Carlson, seconded by Alderman Walker. Any comments or questions on that, Council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Verbic,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes. Second reading has been waived for ordinance 2026-021. Looking forward to seeing the construction starting.
Welcome to DeKalb.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. All right, now about number 2, ordinance 2026-022, approving a special use permit to allow for an expansion to the existing church and parking lot for the property located at 1515 North First Street, Hillcrest Covenant Church. Can I have a motion to bring it to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman Larson, seconded by Alderman Carlson, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And the gentlemen in the audience tonight, Tim Suter and Dave Jafellers, who are representing the Hillcrest Covenant Church, are not new to this area. Each of them has raised families and made livings in their own businesses, and all along as supporters of the Hillcrest Covenant Church, they are aware that their church is growing. They need some more space for the congregation. They had some limitations on the site, but we've been happy to work with them. They have been very creative in terms of their architectural and engineering work to this point. They will increase the sanctuary capacity to about 350 people with this addition. And they will also provide some additional classroom space, gathering areas, and larger restrooms. Part of the addition is built over an existing lower level space, so the footprint doesn't increase very much. But there will be an expansion of the parking lot, which has been redesigned and enlarged by about 55 spaces. And if you've ever been around there, it was a creative solution. Every inch is probably accounted for. And because there are some adjacent neighbors, they've been very attentive to what their concerns might be. There has been some buffering and shielding, and there will be special attention to the parking lot lighting so that the poles are not right up against the property line, but are set back, and also have the proper shielding on the lamps to keep light from shining into adjacent homes. Planning and Zoning Commission had a public hearing last week on this project, and what's really before you is a special use request, because although when church was first built, you could have churches as a permitted use in a residential area, that's changed, and so they got caught up in that change over time and have gone a long ways to do whatever has been required by the city, and we're very grateful for their cooperation and collaboration, and we support this particular item.
Excellent. Questions or comments, council? Not seeing any. All right, roll call, please.
Walker,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes. Ordinance 2026-022 is passed on first reading. I would take a motion to waive second reading.
Motion to waive second reading and approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Verbic, seconded by Alderman Walker. Any questions, comments? All right, roll call, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Mayor Barnes.
Yes. Ordinance, second reading has been waived for ordinance 2026-022. How about let's give a round of applause for all the people investing in our community. Appreciate you all. Meeting's almost over at this point. You might as well just stick with it now that you've been in for the long haul. All right, agenda item M, reports and communications. Council member reports. Alderman Larson, you want to kick us off?
Just a sadness. It was the first Pride Parade I've missed since we had it. We just had other things that I couldn't get out of. So, but yeah, it sounded like a great event as always.
Huge turnout, yeah.
It gets bigger every year.
Yep, it does. Alderman Walker.
No report.
Alderman Verbic.
Have a wonderful 4th, everybody. Enjoy.
Alderman Carlson.
I got a couple. Pride Fest I went to, and I swear it was bigger than last year. Tons of people. What a great time. Everybody was having a great time, and I'm so glad I went. I also want to thank Alderman Walker for inviting me, and I came down to the Juneteenth and got to see you speak and meet a lot of people, and whoever that was singing, God, she sounded like Tina Turner. It was great. If you guys missed it, it was fantastic. I was into it. It was great. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the mural on 7th Street. I've lived in this town my whole life. That used to be a part of my bike route. God, that looks awesome. It does to me. I think they're doing a great job, and I'm so glad. And also the lights going down to Van Buren. God, that looks so great, at least to me. This is my opinion. I love it, and I said when I voted on that, the art, we always have to keep funding the art. That's what keeps us human. And in today's world, with how everything's moving, if we don't keep doing that, you're going to lose your human soul. So I love that. And the last part was the lawns. I'm seeing people mow them. Alderman Walker and I, he got a hold of me. We're going to work together and go to some houses. It's not, we're not trying to shame anyone. We understand it. People have different economics or disabilities, whatever it may be, and they have a pride. Well, hopefully aldermen and alder people will show up, help you, and then they won't have that anymore. So get a hold of me, keep doing that. Have a great 4th of July, everybody.
Love it. Agree with the mural. If you haven't gone, go by, take a look at it. Talk to the artist. Don't talk to her too much, though. She's busy and has a deadline to meet. So she's wonderful, though. But then also had our first Homeless Coalition meeting with about 7 different agencies here in the community to talk about, my goal is to have no homeless here in the city of DeKalb. We had a great conversation. We've got some good next steps going forward. So I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion with all of them. Had a nice lunch with Alderman Verbeek. It's always great to circle up and get some alignment and discuss ideas. So that was a lot of fun. I didn't make that Juneteenth event, but there was another Juneteenth event on Sunday. I went to that. It was well attended too and a lot of fun. And someone caught me line dancing on video. Yeah, I know. Yeah. It is what it is. And then Pride Fest as well. Over 100 vendors were out there. It was just, it was incredible. So a lot of just really cool things happening in the city of DeKalb. I highly encourage you all, get out, enjoy it, enjoy our people, enjoy our festivals. There's just a lot to be proud of here in the city of DeKalb. And happy 4th of July. City Manager.
No report.
All right. With that, we move on to agenda item N, executive session. We have none, which means adjournment. I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Carlson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.